be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. Let's see together now how I can perform a circuit breaker timing test. To perform a circuit breaker timing test, I need two things. The first thing is the breaker analyzer test kit, and I will use the Aegis device from Megger Company. Through the breaker analyzer test kit, I can issue different operating sequences for the circuit breaker, such as close open, and open close open. I can also receive feedback from the main poles of the circuit breaker. Using the comments along with the feedback I receive from the main poles of the circuit breaker, I can calculate my timings. The second thing is the control supply voltage. Through the control supply voltage, I can spin 3 circuits specific to the circuit breaker. The first circuit I have is the Descent charging motor circuit, and this is the motor responsible for charging the spring specific to the circuit breaker. The second circuit I have is the closing circuit, and I connect the close coil to it. The third circuit I have is the tripping circuit, and I connect the trip coil to it. Here, the control supply voltage will be used with the commons that will go to the close coil and the trip coil, based on the operation sequence that we will implement. With the commons that will go to the close coil and the trip coil based on the operation sequence we will execute. All right, let's see how we perform the second experiment technique. I have appointed 2 circuits. The first circuit is the control circuit, and it consists of the control circuit, 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 and the control circuit. All right, let's look at the first control train. The first thing in the control train is the DC control source. As for the DC control source, I can supply it from the DC control train that is in the DC control train, whether it is in the switchgear or GIS, and it is a 125 DC control train. Is it possible to use the same control supply voltage with the commands that I will give to the close coil and the tripping coil? Of course, it is possible, but I have a problem. What is it? We mentioned in the closing time and tripping time that the 2 tests are conducted at different levels of control supply voltage, such as 100%, and in cases of under voltage and over voltage, based on, for example, if I'm doing the closing time at 85% and 110% of the control supply voltage, 110% of the control supply voltage. As for me, the tripping time works at 70% and 110% of the control supply voltage. So now I can't use the control supply voltage that I have in the panel, so I will go and get an external power supply unit like the B10E device from Major. Now, how do I get my data to the close coil and the trip coil? First, I have to disconnect the closing coil from the closing circuit and the tripping coil from the tripping circuit, and the tripping coil from the tripping circuit. And so now, with the closed coil having both the positive and negative terminals, and the tripping coil having both the positive and negative terminals, the first thing I will do is connect the negative terminal of the trip coil with the negative terminal of the closing coil and connect them to the negative terminal of my power supply unit. I take the positive terminal from the external power supply unit and connect it to the closing coil and the tripping coil. However, I cannot connect it directly to the closing coil. Instead, I must connect it to the breaker analyzer because it is through the close command or the open command or any command specification. So I take the positive terminal from the external power supply unit and connect it to the terminal named input inside the Eagle device, which is the breaker analyzer. After that, in the Eagle device, there are 2 contacts. Contacts between the terminal labeled closed coil and contacts between the terminal labeled positive and the terminal labeled trip coil. The coil and the second contact are between the positive terminal and the terminal labeled trip coil. This means that this terminal should be connected to the closed coil and this terminal should be connected to the trip coil, because the brake analyzer device typically, when you give a close command or trip command, closes the contact based on the operation sequence you specified. So if you tell it to close, it will close the contact between the input terminal and the terminal labeled closed coil. And if you give an open command, it will close the contact between the positive input terminal and the terminal labeled trip coil. And I will take the terminal labeled closed coil and connect it to the positive terminal of the closed coil, and take the terminal labeled trip coil and connect it to the positive terminal of the trip coil. This way, I have completed my control circuit. As for the primary circuit, I need to take my feedback from the main bulbs of the circuit breaker. I have a special cable that comes with the Eagle device, which is the breaker analyzer, and it has 4 terminals. I need to take my feedback from I have a special cable that comes with the device which has 4 terminals. L1 terminal, L2 terminal, L3 terminal, and a neutral terminal. I connect the 3 terminals, L1, L2, L3, to the 3 poles of the circuit breaker. Then I connect the other ends of the poles of the circuit breaker together with a jumper and output a single terminal, which is the neutral terminal. Finally, this cable is gathered and connected to the terminal labeled timing on the Eagle device. And with that, I have completed my connection setup.